1969 was an extremely eventful year in our nation's and our world's history. Demonstrations in Berkeley, California demand college students' freedom of speech. The U.S.'s involvement in Vietnam is not favored by our country, so Nixon initiates Vietnamization to get our troops out. We're preparing for the first man to walk the moon in July. In Britain, troops are sent to Northern Ireland to try and restore peace, but instead cause riots and discontent. The first ever Woodstock, an Aquarian exposition, 3 days of peace and music, begins in the summer. And most prevalently, the gay rights, civil rights, and women's rights movements are seen everywhere you turn. In 1969, a very inspiring and influential woman gave a speech in front of the House of Representatives. It is a straightforward and uncomplicated 6-minute speech that is simply called Equal Rights for Women. Shirley Chisholm, the first Black congresswoman in the history of the United States, delivered this speech to try and get an amendment passed that guaranteed equal rights for women. The amendment stated, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The amendment was passed and sent on to the states for ratification, but the required 38 states did not accept it. Even currently, it has not yet been adapted into our Constitution, because we are 3 states short of 38. But because of Shirley Chisholm and her eye-opening speech, the Equal Rights Amendment has progressed significantly since 1969. Her speaking abilities, daringness, and vision for the future is simply phenomenal, yet she is probably one of the most underrated of her time. Shirley Anita St. Hill was born in Brooklyn, New York, but because of financial situations, she was sent to live with her grandmother in Barbados for the majority of her childhood. In an exclusive interview conducted by visionaryproject.org, Shirley revealed that one of the most influential women in her life was her grandmother. Shirley attributes her superb speaking and writing abilities to her grandmother's strict teachings and British-style schooling in Barbados. Another extremely influential person in her life was her father. Shirley has said, "My father was a very proud Black man. He instilled pride in his children, a pride in ourselves and our race that was not as fashionable at that time." After elementary school, she went back to Brooklyn and completed high school, graduating with honors. She received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Brooklyn College and then went on to receive her master's degree in early childhood development from Columbia University. Shirley started getting into politics when the assembly seat in her district became available. While campaigning, she was quickly met with hostility just because of her gender. In her speech, Equal Rights for Women, she addresses this topic. She says, "But the truth is that in the political world, I have far oftener been discriminated against because I am a woman than because I am Black." Shirley was never afraid to speak her mind and do what she believed was right. After representing her district for 4 years, she decided to run for a spot in Congress. Competing against her for a spot in the House of Representatives was James Farmer Jr., the civil rights activist who won the momentous debate between Wiley College and the University of Southern California. Shirley won the spot primarily due to the fact that she was fluent in Spanish and appealed to the large Puerto Rican population. In Congress, she was initially assigned to the House Forestry Committee, but she shocked many by demanding the assignment. She was placed on the Veterans Affairs Committee and then eventually graduated to the Education and Labor Committee. She served 7 terms altogether. Then, she decided to do something that defined her for the rest of her life. In 1972, she decided to run for the presidency. As the first Black woman to ever make such an audacious attempt, she did not win, but she did gain 152 delegates before withdrawing from the race. In addition to these accomplishments, she also founded the National Women's Political Caucus, wrote 2 autobiographical works, was an active member in the NAACP, and was a professor at Mount Holyoke College for 4 years. In 1993, she was invited by Bill Clinton to serve as an ambassador to Jamaica, but she had to decline due to poor health. She died in 2005, but even currently, Shirley Chisholm is still influencing and shaping our society today. Just think, without her, we might not have an African-American president today. She helped pave the way for many women and minorities in the political field. Without her, the feminist movement might not be as prevalent as it is today. In Shirley's speech on gender equality, she states, It is obvious that discrimination exists. Women do not have the opportunities that men do, and women that do not conform to the system, who try to break with the accepted patterns, are stigmatized as odd and unfeminine. The fact is that a woman who aspires to be chairman of the board or a member of the House does so for exactly the same reasons as any man. Basically, these are that she thinks she can do the job and that she wants to try. Emma Watson, British actor and goodwill ambassador for UN Women, gave a speech in September of last year that sounds very familiar to the statements made by Shirley Chisholm in her equal rights speech.
Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong, too aggressive, isolating, and anti-men, unattractive. Both men and women should feel free to be sensitive. Both men and women should feel free to be strong. It is time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals. If we stop defining each other by what we are not and start defining ourselves by who we are, we can all be freer.
It is not known if Shirley Chisholm is someone who Emma Watson got her inspiration from before presenting this speech, but it just goes to show that Shirley's beliefs and ideals are still prevalent in today's society.
I want history to remember me, not that I was the first black woman to be elected to the Congress, not as the first black woman to have made a bid for the presidency of the United States, but as a black woman who lived in the 20th century and who dared to be herself.